Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. This is my shoulder vise. I am going to show you how to use it. I'm going to talk to you all about it, and I'm going to show you how to install one. Did a mock-up. I'm going to walk you through the whole process. Great addition to your bench. Traditional shoulder vise, what's nice about it is there are no obstructions, so you don't have anything underneath there. You can grab hold of whatever it is that you're doing, and now you are limited somewhat. My capacity is 14.5 inches, but I can still hold another couple of inches securely. But it's nice in that it moves fast. You always want to have your board in the middle because the force of the vise is going to be centered, and then if you're off to one side or the other, it may rack on you, but as long as you're in the middle, it's great. It doesn't take much to put it in a position where it holds it securely enough that when you saw, there's absolutely no vibration. Just wonderful feedback when you can do something like that and not feel the piece moving on you. Traditional shoulder vise. First, a double start thread means on a normal vise, if you have to spin that 6 times to move 1 inch, this moves an inch in 2 rotations. I'll show you. There's an inch. So here we go. 1. Well, it's a little bit beyond 2. But that's nice and fast. It also limits the amount of pressure you can apply. Most people put way too much pressure on there, and that risks breaking that joint. When I put a piece in there, I mean, that's all it needs. That's not moving. So, nice feature. The other thing is, because there is so much thread, so here's your big brass nut, and that's almost 3 inches. It is 3 inches. That's tucked in here, which means when this is extended all the way out, there's very little, if any, up and down movement. So, and the way that that this piece holds onto the end of it, although it allows a little bit of swivel side to side, so you want the ability to grab hold of something that's not perfectly parallel. So if it was a little bit of a wedge shape, you could still lock it firmly. So you've got a little bit of movement that way, but you don't want a lot of movement this way. Problem is, if it moves like this, as you hold your board trying to keep it in position, as it tightens, it's going to pull this up, and now it's no longer where you wanted it. So we have it milled specifically like that so that that problem doesn't occur. Parts are brass and nicely polished steel. It's just a really nice clean weld. Everything about it is a really nice premium product. But the fact that it moves so fast, and it's just a couple of whips and you're closed, whips and you're open. So this is called your end cap, and this is your arm. This needs to be a big, heavy, substantial piece of timber. And mine is 3¼ inches thick by 4 inches, and that is out there 24 inches. There's a lot of pressure put on that joint when you wind this in, and of course the harder you pull on it, the more pressure you're going to put on that. I prefer that not to break. So let me explain a few things. First of all, you got a dovetail joint here, and I reinforced it with 4, in this case, what were they, mahogany? Mahogany pins. 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. They don't go all the way through. They just go into this big tail. This section is quite thick. It goes down, it's the full 4 inches. There's a slot cut in here. I'll get to that in a moment. So you got a lot of cross-grain construction going on. In case you're not sure what that means, wood's going to move across its width. So from here to here, that is going to move. This is not. This piece is not going to move from here to here, but it's going to move this way. This piece is not going to move this way. So this joint can't be glued fast because it'll cause issues. This joint can't be. This one can be made solid, and this joint cannot be glued. That's got to float as well. Now I'm going to take that one apart and show you what I've got going on. But so from here to here is glued. I did glue probably that much. I have a bolt, a rod and bolt that goes through here to about there. And that helps to keep this together so that it resists the force when this is being tightened to keep these 2 joints closed. I have multiple splines down in there, and that's what keeps that all together, as well as the pressure from the bolt. Over here, this is a lag bolt. Actually, that's not true either. That's a bolt and a nut, but I used a lag bolt on my mock-up. And this section from right here is probably glued that much. I'm not worrying about expansion in that little bit. That little bit is glued. The rest is dry fit, meaning there's 3 splines in there. The splines are glued to this piece. They're dry fit in opposite grooves in this piece, and that allows this to move like so. So all the movement on this center core is going to go that way. Just for noting, so this ramp is fastened to this, but this piece right here is actually put in with springs. So that little gap closes and opens depending upon the season as this expands and contracts. And then over here, this jaw is attached here. There is a tongue on the end of it that fits into that groove. That keeps it from flopping like a propeller when you're spinning this. Also allows it to move like that, and it prevents it from moving, wiggling forward and back as you close it. So let me take this apart and just show you what I mean by splines. Now I just roughed out a big dovetail on here. I think we can take all these pieces apart. I didn't glue anything up. Okay. So this piece has 3 splines. These are actually Baltic birch, and these are glued into this piece. You don't have to worry about anything. This is not, there's no instability here. They fit into these grooves. This is a dry fit, and obviously if you got 3, they've got to be lined up perfectly. I've tried it with 2, and with 2, sometimes you get a little bit of movement. The third one completely eliminates any possible movement. And the lag bolt goes through here into this piece somewhere. No, it goes into this piece, sorry. So this is also dry fit. These splines are glued into this piece. This would be that center section of the core. And then these are dry fit. That bolt, or that big long threaded rod actually goes from here, coming through there, goes all the way through this piece. You don't want to drag it, take it all the way through, so it goes into here. Now what I would do is drill a hole up through the bottom of your vise, your bench, so that you can access the end of that bolt, and you can put in a washer and a nut and keep that nice and secure. So what we need to do in order to install this, we need to cut a slot in here that the tongue is going to ride on. We're going to cut a tongue on the end of this and mate those up. We won't bother cutting the end of this any particular shape. We're going to drill a hole, a 2-inch diameter hole, to sink this big nut into. It'll go almost all the way through. And then it's just a matter of mounting that plate onto here. And there's really not a whole lot to it. Once you've got this part built, it's a pretty simple build. I made an incorrect statement. I was thinking, when I was talking about this, I was thinking about this core section of the bench. This obviously is this piece. So long grain. So when this goes together, this is glued. So that's made fast. And of course, once it's glued, it's one piece. All right, now, something that you kind of have to just live with. I've always, occasionally, I've had, when the vise was closed, I had the end of this sticking up above the bench, just if you're dealing with a big panel. I could have made a smaller knob on the end of that, but I didn't want to not have this in the center of this piece because I wanted it centered on that jaw so it's not pushing at the bottom or at the top. So that's a minor issue. So we're going to take this and measuring from right here, which is going to be right on that line, we're going to, that's 7 inches centered. I had a pen around here. So we'll come out 7 inches, and you can modify this to suit whatever you want to do, but I'll give you these numbers. So 7 inches, square a line on there, across there. And then center that should be about, well, it's actually a little bit under 4. So 3 7/8, so we'll just go right about there. So inch and 15. Now the nut, and sometimes you gotta knock this off with a mallet. It's a snug fit. I don't want to dent my bench. That's just on there for decoration, just matches up with the other end. So that is going to go in like this, and I believe that measures 2 inches. Not that it needs to be exact. It's actually right on 2 inches. So we need to drill a hole, and I don't. You could if you wanted to. I don't mortise this piece in. I let it sit up on the surface just like that. I actually have, and somebody might be questioning this, I have, capacity-wise, 4.5 inches. I rarely, if ever, occasionally I've had a drawer in there, a narrow drawer, but for the most part, you're going to be 3/4 to a half or less. Occasionally you're cutting in something a little bit deeper, but you don't need that much capacity. Now, as far as reaching over, I find it very comfortable. This is never in my way. When that's closed down on a 1/2 inch board I'm sawing, it's not a problem at all. But you may want to mock something up to make sure it suits you. So 2-inch hole centered right there. And we'll actually take that over when we drill it so that we are the depth that we need. We'll drill that part first. Then we need to drill a hole through to allow this to pass through, and that measures just under 1.5 inches. So that will be, we will drill at 1.5 inches. Okay, so let's set the depth. Now I put a block underneath here so that when it goes out, I have zero clearance, and it will leave me a nice clean exit. So there's what we need for depth. Okay. Oops, that's not where we want it. Right there. We mark the center. 1.15 inches. Yep. All right, now we should be able to simply put that back in place. I've got to allow this to go down deeper. Make sure that will travel all the way. Yep. Make sure that drops in there. Ooh, I was afraid of that. It's so close. We may have to tap that in. Now I want to make sure once I get it in there that I don't have to bring it out again, because it's certainly not going to come out easily. So we'll drop that down. Ooh, that's close. In fact, it's not quite enough. I'm actually sitting right there on the chamfer, so I got to go a little bit more. So I'm going to put that back in, drill just a little bit deeper, just to make sure. Now I'd want to make sure this is all complete. That's all finished before I put this in here, because I got a funny feeling that once this goes in, it's not going to come out very easily. Spacing doesn't really matter in terms of that actually goes in there. Now, I might have lined that up a little bit better, but it's not like you can really see it. Let's make sure that this goes in properly. Well, that's a close fit. It's just a matter of getting it started. Now our next, actually we can put this on now. Or should we? No, well yeah, we can. We can always bring that out in order to put those on, keep them from getting lost or dropping on the floor. All right. right, let's set this aside. Now this is our jaw. I lined mine with leather. We also have an option of a rubber and cork product that just peels off the back and sticks on, and it's nice because it gives really good grip. I do this for two reasons. Number one, it just protects the face of the piece you're clamping, and number two, it just improves the grip a little bit as opposed to wood on wood. Either one. Leather I think looks a little bit nicer. Okay, I'm going to just copy this. We need to cut a slot. I want to get in between the grooves. Doesn't really matter where it goes on this, but I'm going to put it toward the bottom here. This one I made, I think it's 3/4. It is. So we go right between 1/2 inch and 3/16 is 11. No, it's not, it's right there. So 1.25 inch, go 3/8 on either side of that. So there's where we'll cut our groove. We can go ahead and cut the groove first, and then we'll cut the tongue, and that goes in there. I'm just using this as an example. That goes in there 1 inch. We want to make sure we don't interfere with that where we have that bolt, but that's not, so. Okay, so there's the notch that we're going to cut out, and we'll go all the way through from here to here. All right, set the height for the depth. It's not that critical, but we may as well get it right on. Now, you could put a dado blade in, but I'm just going to make multiple passes just because I hate having to go through the setup. Now we can do that one on the bandsaw or on the table saw. Okay, that end is square, so I can just set it on here on my sled, raise that up. Okay, that should be enough. Now, you'll notice that you have to allow for a little bit of slop in there so that this doesn't bind when it's, sometimes when it opens or when it closes, it goes off in one direction and you don't want that. So I just cut a little bit of a radius in there. We can do that with anything that's somewhat round enough. What have I got here? I'm just eyeballing that to get it close. Now, probably easier to cut that with a handsaw and then just shape it with a chisel.
I already switched it. No, I already did.
Okay, I'd rather have to take some off to make this movable than to end up making it too sloppy. So I want to have the flange over tight, and I want this opening to be essentially level. So we'll snug that up. I've got a little bit of material to take off of here, but that's no big deal. So this can't go that way because of this. And obviously it can't come out because this is all the way over tight. So I'm going to go in there and mark those holes. We supply the hardware you need with the vise screw. These are number 10s. Brass ones for in here, which I forgot to do, but it was so tight you hardly need it, but brass screws in there. The rings are for when you do your handle. If you don't do that, when that drops, it won't take very long before that'll break off no matter what you do. So we just put an O-ring in there and it just softens the blow. So we provide you a couple of those. And then there's a couple of steel screws. So I'll pre-drill for these. Now I forgot, this needs to come off as well because those corners will jam in there. So that really needs to be the same profile. Whether I do it here or over on the bandsaw, I think I can hog it off with the rasp. Now you may have to tweak that a little bit, but we'll put it together first and see if it operates. I like to use an awl to get the hole started so that I know it'll drill in the exact spot I want. A little easier to start these screws. And by the way, if you're going to use the brass screws in here, we give you the same size so you can go in and actually cut the threads with the steel screw and then put the brass screw in after. That way you don't risk breaking off those brass screws. They're not very strong. I'm doing this because it's a little awkward to turn these in that confined quarters. So having the threads already cut makes it a lot easier. I can't get that in there. I thought I could. It's actually going to be easier with a ratchet. Now I want to flush this up with the top. That's a lot of material. Okay, let's try that. So it opens up fine. And there's where it binds. So I may have to come in. It'll move like that, but because of the amount of flex that you have this way, that's binding. So we'll go in and take a little bit of material off of there. You can see how big of a gap I have in mine. And like I said, I'd rather come back in and have to adjust it than to take too much off the first time around. So when that's angled and it's up tight, oh, that was too much. I gotta do that in the bottom as well. I shortened that tongue and rounded it. I took about 1/16 of an inch off of here. Same thing on the bottom. So now that freely spins and comes out. So it works great. I would put a little bit of grease inside there. You don't want something that's going to be cut. I don't put it out here because it's too frequently touching it with my hands. I don't want grease all over my hands, and that works fine. But in there, I would put just a little bit. Now, the last thing that I would do, if you want this to work extremely well, is we supply this as well, and it's replaceable. It's a combination of cork and rubber. You can actually use that as a press to hold it on. And that will improve the grip. If you do have to cut that to fit, you got to cut it very slowly or else it'll disintegrate on you. I turned the handle real quick on the lathe, put those rubber O-rings on there so that it doesn't slam when it shuts. And if you can envision doing the rest of your bench, this is a great vise. We have the hardware, it's extremely well made. All the other stuff, you just got to supply the desire to do it and go at it. Good luck. If you like my work and enjoy my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos and help take your woodworking to the next level. I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the link below, the chisel and plane icon, it'll take you to our site and introduce you to all the tools that we actually manufacture right here in our shop. It'll also give you information on our online and in-person workshops.